Hi, Adam. Thanks for being here today.
Great to be here, Tricia.
All the way from sunny Trinidad.
All the way from sunny Trinidad. You got it. It's a beautiful sunny day today.
Nice. Why don't we just jump right in and tell us what genre you write in?
Sure. I'm primarily a science fiction writer. I like most other writers, I have this and that out there for other genres. I've written a couple of Sherlock Holmes stories, but my main focus is my Cassidy Chronicles series. Right now, there are 5 novels in it, with a 6th one scheduled for publication in February.
Oh, fun, exciting. Why don't you just give us a general overview of the Cassidy Chronicles and maybe a little bit of a synopsis of each book?
Okay, a little bit of synopsis of a 100,000-word book. Okay, so the Cassidy Chronicles, it's set in a near future America, or I should say near future North America, because America as we know it has disintegrated. There's a dozen squabbling countries, and the action starts in the Sonoran Republic, which consists of the former states of Arizona and New Mexico. And it starts actually at a wedding. Ayanna, Kendra, and Derek are getting married, and the Reverend pulls out a gun and tries to kill Ayanna. So they take off running, and the rest of the first volume is them trying to figure out why, who hired this person, why do they want her dead, and so all sorts of secrets are revealed. There's all sorts of betrayal, and it's action-packed from start to finish, along with enough twists and turns to make any mountain road jealous. The second book picks up 5 years later. We're now in the year 2118. Ayanna and Kendra, and you'll hear me refer to them also as CAS and Ken. Ayanna's nickname from childhood has been Cass, and Kendra just gets shortened down to Ken. Cass and Ken are working on their dreams. They're raising their daughters, and basically they just want to, they want to live their lives. And they are approached by the United Earth government, which says, we've got a little problem. In 20 years, 3/4 of the population is going to be dead. Can you help us out? So what are they going to say? They're not going to say no. But it drags them into a position of conflict with the Artemis colony, which is the lunar colony, and the other 3 colonies out in the solar system. In the third book, The Measure of Humanity, so the conflict is continuing, and Artemis has dug into Kendra's past and discovered something that she didn't even know. And this goes back to before she was born. And the resolution to this is either going to change the world or destroy her dream, one or the other. In A Quiet Revolution, they are continuing to move forward. They're still trying to fend off this legal challenge from Artemis, and they decide, okay, well, if we can't talk to these people, if we can't get them to at least acknowledge the validity of what's going on, and there's lots of room in the solar system for us all to live peacefully, fine, maybe we need to find different people to lead this country. So they're fomenting a revolution. And in the 5th one, Triumph's Ashes, the question there is, what price are they willing to pay to keep their dream alive? The dedication, there's a dedication in every book, and the dedication in that one is to those who looked at death and decided the price was not too high. So
that's very cool. That's a great overview. And I'm assuming the science fiction is coming in by the fact that people are living on the moon as well as other planets, correct?
Correct. It's hard to do this without spoilers. But one thing, so they're on the cusp of faster than light technology. They're on the cusp of building starships and getting out and exploring, interstellar space and not just interplanetary space. So that's also, that's also the science fiction behind it. And also what Ayana was working on in the first book, which I will not tell you. Gotta have some mystery left.
Well, definitely, we don't want any spoilers.
No spoilers. So, yeah, that's where the science fiction comes in. It's you've got the whole space opera thing, the whole there's this conflict going on, and it erupts into open warfare. It's not just behind the scenes, it's not just covert and espionage, but it's out and out, space battles and, but you also have the exploration side of it, because during all of this, Kendra's dream is to get humanity out into the stars, get humanity off of the Earth, out of the system, and exploring. And so she's pushing that just as hard, if not harder, than she is trying to deal with this conflict that she never looked for. She never sought out. She wants no part of. She just wants to end it and move on. So she's pushing the exploration. And so they get out there to the stars and discover all sorts of fun things.
It sounds very much like the movie Contacts and Interstellar and some of those very cool movies.
To a degree, it's more human centric. Contact is very much there are really advanced aliens out there, and we just have to figure out how to decipher the message that they're sending us. I haven't seen Interstellar. I've read the synopsis a couple of times. But again, Interstellar is, there are very advanced aliens out there, and, we've got to figure out what they're trying to tell us. In these 5 books, they haven't run into any advanced aliens, who are trying to give us some sort of message. Now, I'm not saying that won't happen somewhere down the line. It's an awfully big galaxy, but it hasn't happened yet.
Very cool. And are you writing through first person or third person?
It depends on the book. These 5 books are all written third person. And I bounce back and forth between, here and there and scenes. And it gets more and more complex the further in the series you get. So by the end of the 5th book, the beginning of each chapter is telling you not only the chapter number, but it's telling you where it's happening and the date it's happening, so that the reader can keep track of, where am I? Am I on the moon, or no, I'm in Earth orbit. Okay. So those are written in third person. The one I just finished writing for NaNoWriMo, which is currently sitting on the to be edited pile, that's also written in third person. It doesn't involve the main characters very much. It's sort of a branch on the Cassidy Chronicles. And the one that's coming out in February is written in the first person, but it's written from Kendra's point of view. And actually, when people get to see the cover for it, it is written by Kendra Cassidy, edited by Adam Gaffen.
Oh, very cool.
It's her memories of her childhood with Ayana. They grew up together. They've known each other. They were born 3 weeks apart. They've known each other basically since they could open their eyes and see each other. And so yeah, it's a first person, not quite coming of age because it only covers a few years. There will be more as she tells me the stories. And it was a lot of fun to write or edit. It was a lot of fun, and because it's them as kids, and so that's an entirely different perspective than writing about them as adults.
Right, I can imagine. And it's interesting that you write mostly female characters. Do you think that's challenging?
As I'm the one who's writing them, I don't think it's particularly challenging. It's come fairly naturally, and the people who I have read them and the people who've left reviews have said I've gotten the tone down pretty well. That they are true to people's expectations. So it doesn't sound clunky, which is a good thing. Okay, I'll take it.
Definitely, that's a high compliment. I know when I write characters, even characters of like a different race or a different background from me, I always make sure and have them checked out with my friends who are of that race or of that background. So I'm not messing anything up, I guess.
There is a degree of that. I try to have my beta readers from as broad a base as I can get, so I get as many different perspectives as I can. And there is a qualitative difference and a quantitative difference between writing contemporary fiction and writing science fiction. Because when you write science fiction, you're freed a little bit from the constraints of reality. Because it's set sometime in the future, whether it's 100 years or 100,000 years, it's set sometime in the future. And so how people are, just consider how people are now versus how people were in 1921. And the roles of various genders and socioeconomic groups now and then. There's a huge gulf in between them.
Right. That
so
really makes sense.
100 years from now, there's going to be an equally sweeping difference between where we are now and where we could be then. So anything is possible.
That's definitely interesting. I hadn't thought of that aspect of like societal change and change in like how people, their personalities and how they may act. So that's definitely interesting. Would you call these books like hard sci-fi, or are they more like adventure sci-fi?
I like to think of them as hard sci-fi. I haven't had anybody call me out yet that's saying, oh, that's impossible. Beyond the certain tropes, the faster than light, which at this point is not possible. Depending on who you talk to, they might say it is impossible, but there might be a loophole. So I would like to say that they're hard science fiction. I try to dig into it and at least come up with a plausible starting point. And then again, I've got to extrapolate a little bit, to get beyond where we are now to where we might be in 100 years.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I have a dystopian novel. It's a YA dystopian novel, but it's post climate change where the whole southern part of the United States is too hot to live on. So it's pushed everybody north, and kind of eerily, it's also post-pandemic. I wrote it in 2019, so it was a little bit predictive But yeah, so it killed like 2/3 of the Earth's population. It pushed everybody north. So the United North States is what I called my country that became Canada, and the US formed one United North States. So that's interesting that you have that, the country breaking off into different states or countries, as it would be.
Yeah, that's actually something I salvaged from a project I started 30 years ago. I started positing, okay, what happens if this group breaks off and that group, and the divide is simply too much. And I I'd been inspired actually by Robert Heinlein. Heinlein's my favorite author, and I was inspired by his future history. And so I was like, gee, I wonder if I could do that. So I started trying to figure out a future history from where I stood, because he wrote his future history back in the 40s. So by now, by the year 2000, we were supposed to have already gone through what he termed the crazy years. So I was starting from a later point, and so I tried to figure out what might happen. So one of the things that I salvaged from that was this map of the United States, all divided up, and that served as the geographical framework for the first volume. So it didn't have any names on it, so had to fill that in. So you have the new Confederacy, and you have the Republic of Texas, and the Big Sky Country. You have the Northern Imperium, Empire of New York, and there's still the United States. It's kind of made out of the leftover bits, the parts that didn't break away, and it's scattered across the entire continent.
Interesting. Yeah, we were just having a dinner conversation this weekend about empires and how long they last, and how our United States empire is nearing the end of that cycle. And I don't know, that makes me anxious to think about that, so I just don't think about it too much.
Well, the thing is, this is my own version of a future history, is a lot of the breakups, because it's not a dystopian novel, okay? A lot of people think, okay, the United States breaks up, therefore it must be a dystopian novel. Not necessarily. I mean, it's a gradual process. I have it taking place starting actually this year, so I'm already wrong about it. Science fiction author, you got to learn to be wrong. So it starts taking place this year, but the final pieces don't break off for another 60 years. So, and it's all happening a little bit at a time. And what happens when there are conflicts? Well, the rest of the planet goes on as it normally does. And if you're living 1,000 miles away from whatever's going on, life is probably continuing pretty much normal for you. And if you're one of the countries, it's partway through the process of disintegrating, and you're living in a country that is not participating in this current little border war, this current little war of secession, it doesn't affect you at all. I mean, you're like Switzerland. It's like, yeah, whatever, they're over there. They can fight. So you have technological and sociological and economic progress still continuing, here and there and moving forward. And the ones that were in the war, at the end of the war, they rebuild and they catch up. And so it continues, rather than this, the Mad Max desert wasteland kind of chaos.
Right. Very cool. Very interesting. Tell me about your background here. For my listeners, he has a background, and he told me beforehand these are some characters, so he's going to tell me a bit more about his characters and the life they take on.
Right. So the main characters are Ayana and Kendra, and Ayana is the one who's directly behind me. She is a physicist, absolutely brilliant, genius. Went to, did the whole MIT thing, has a PhD in optical physics. Kendra was her best friend growing up, and she didn't go to college. She went out west and got into movies, the Sensies, and they were separated for 13 years after high school, before getting back together. But the image is of the two of them. It's their Christmas card, and down underneath, you can't see, it says, "We survived another year," which I found quite appropriate for them, because by the time I'm writing these, the 4 books in the second part of the series, survival was not guaranteed. But yeah, I try to pull them out into reality, and this is a postcard that I can send out to readers. I'm happy to send it out. Christmas greetings from Ayana and Kendra. Kendra is out in the world. Okay, she really took on the primary role in the series. Not that Ayana is not important. She is the instigator of the entire series. But Kendra had to grow up more. So her character development has pushed her to the forefront of the series. And so she's the one who's the voice in my head the most. And so, like I said, she has the book coming out, the Memories of Ayana. She has her own email. She has a Facebook account. She has an Instagram account. She puts out a newsletter every couple of weeks. Right now, she's telling the story about her her training with the company called Outlook. Outlook was an extra legal company that specialized in couriers. If the package absolutely positively had to get there, you hire Outlook and they give it to a courier, and they get the package there no matter what. Whether it's they go deep undercover or they blast their way through, the package gets there. So she's telling this story in her newsletter that goes out to my subscribers. Yeah, she's a vibrant character. She's got lots of stories to tell. So I'm not going to limit her presence in the world to just when I put out a book.
That's very cool. That seems like readers would just love that extra information from the characters they love.
They did a CAS and Ken did an interview for a blog that just came out the other day. They sat down with the writer of the blog and they asked questions, and CAS and Ken answered them. So
very cool. Very cool. I love that.
I might write I might be the author. I might be the one writing down the words, but it's my characters' stories. It's their lives. So, they ought to be able to tell it.
Yeah, I love character-driven books, and I definitely strive to do that in my work as well. Can you tell me what you love or what you hope that your readers experience or get from reading your book?
Well, every author wants their readers to enjoy the books. We want you to like what you read. Okay, we want to entertain you. Absolutely, 100%. Um, I also want you to think a little bit. You know, I don't shove the deep moral questions, you know, in your face, but there is a question in every book. The first one is, what are you going to do for your family? You know, what do you do to find and protect your family? Then they both answer that. Second one is, how do you deal with new responsibilities? The third one is dealing with, you know, dealing with secrets. Fourth one, you know, what are you going to do to change things? And like I said about the fifth one, what are you willing to pay to keep your dream alive? And so they all have a theme. They all have an underlying question, but somebody can read the book and just be entertained. I'm perfectly happy with that. You know, you read my book and you're entertained, great.
Awesome. And what age group are your readers? Are these made strictly for adults, or could a high school kid pick them up and read them?
Oh, absolutely. A high school kid would, you know, be able to dive right into one of these and chew it right up. The first one, especially, Cassidy Chronicles Volume 1, it's a very fast-paced book. My books are largely dialogue-driven, rather than long stretches of exposition. I love Tolkien. I took a class on Tolkien in college, but you know, 20 pages of exposition and one word and one line of dialogue, it's awfully hard to get through, you know. So the first one, like I said, it's an adventure. Yes, it's science fiction. You know, and it is hard science fiction, but it is an adventure. It's a whodunit. There's betrayal and espionage and mystery and, you know, just cross-country. You know, there's a cross-country chase trying to figure out what's going on.
Very cool. How did you get into writing? Or do you have a science background, or do you have a literary background, or both?
I wouldn't say I have particularly a science background. I've read plenty of science. I think the biggest thing that got me into writing is the fact that I read a lot, and the more you read, the more I think your brain starts saying, well, what if? And you start going down a different path than the one the author created. Or you get to the point where you say, okay, well, that was cool. Where's the next one? You know, what happened next? And the author may have just said, you know, oh, no, it's just, here's a book. It's, you know, right here, this by this, there's your story. Yeah, but if you write a good book, if you write characters that engage with the reader, you want to know more about what happened to the characters, because characters come to life. If you have written a good book, your characters are alive in the minds of the people who read them. And so you do that long enough as a reader, and you start saying, okay, I want to write, you know, I want to write the rest of this story. I mean, you look at all the fan fiction that's out there. Somewhere down in a filing cabinet somewhere, I have, I'd say about a half inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch of typed manuscript pages of a Star Trek novel that I started writing, about 30 years ago.
Wow.
And, you know, every so often I go back and look at it, and it's okay, it's not bad, but it was the, okay, here's a universe, here are characters I love, I want to write a story about them. You know, it's not that far to go from here are somebody else's characters to here are my own characters.
Neat. And where do you see the series going? Do you have an ending that you're thinking of, or will it just keep going?
So the first 5 books are what I call, the first book is sort of a prequel now, because it's set 5 years before anything else happens. Excuse me. The next 4 books are the Artemis War. And at the end of that, Kendra has established her Terran Federation. She has incorporated some of the planetary governments that had been opposing her are now wrapped into the Terran Federation, and things are ready to go forward. So from this point, there are lots of directions I can take this. I intend to explore as many of them as I can. The novel I have sitting in my to be edited pile is like I said, a branch on the Cassidy Chronicles, and it's set a couple of years later, and it's taking the crew of this massive ship. You know, it's 4 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide. Yeah, it's big. It's got 4,000 people aboard, and the idea is it goes out. It's self-sufficient. It's a floating city. It's a flying city, essentially. It goes out on these deep space, long endurance missions, and just goes and explores and goes to see what's out there. And so, that could go on for I don't know how long. I have an idea. I already have an idea for the next book in that branch. So I'll start writing that in a little while.
Very cool. And did you say your 5th book is already out? So the series is sort of complete, or it's coming out very soon?
The 5th book is out. It came out in August. And so that you can read those 5 books and it will feel complete. But there are so many characters in there. I mean, by the end of it, from the 3rd book on, I put a cast of characters in the back, just so people can, see who all is in it. And it's also a way for me to give back to my fans, because most of the people in the back of the book have let me borrow their names. These are real people that I know, who I've interacted with, who have said, yeah, sure, go ahead, use my name. Absolutely. So, but by the time of the 5th book, yeah, there's probably 10 or 12 pages of cast of characters in there. And some of them have these fantastic stories that I just barely scrape the surface of. So, and the beautiful thing about science fiction is that you can write any genre in science fiction.
Okay.
The example I love is Isaac Asimov. Okay, he wrote The Caves of Steel, which was the first Elijah Bailey novel. It's a science fiction novel because it's set, I don't know, at least several hundred years in the future, when the population of Earth was moved into these underground cities, the Caves of Steel. And we've all, and there are 50 colonies out there which have all gained their independence. The robots are a part of everyday life, but it's a murder mystery. Okay, it is a murder mystery. You could strip away the science fiction elements and drop that into New York City, and it would still work. So you can write any kind of genre you want to in science fiction. So if I felt like writing a murder mystery, based in the Cassidy verse, I could. So there, and you know, I'm looking forward to exploring, you know, where I can go with it.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of more great books to come from you.
I certainly hope so. That's the plan. I don't have a end plan in mind. I don't have a capstone work in mind. So they ought to be coming out for a while.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your books, your characters, and yourself with us. And thank you for being here.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Take care, Adam.
You too.
Bye.